Also wie ihr seht, ist das kein Zufall, dass ich mich mit diesem Thema beschäftige. Und zwar nicht nur als Schriftsteller. Das ist Teil meiner sogenannten Identität.
Shalom, my name is Segal and I live as an Israeli filmmaker and writer in Berlin. When I was about 6 years old, I seen the film The Never-Ending Story, based on the novel from Michael Ende. I must have seen only the teaser because I don't think anybody would have let me in the theater at 6. And that was enough, and I started drilling a hole in my mother's head that she should definitely buy the book for me because I wanted to be like the kid in the movie. If I read the book, then the events will come to life. And I think this is what I do until today. When I write, I try to bring my imagination to life also when I adapt a book of mine into a film. So my maternal grandparents come originally from Berlin. They fled from the city in which I live today. It's a bit of a long story. My grandmother's family used to live in Schöneberg, where they had a flat and also an antiquity shop. And shortly before the Kristallnacht, the father of my grandmother passed away. He had a heart condition. And my great-grandmother was left alone with 3 children, and she took over that store, that antiquity store, with her son. And then the Kristallnacht came and the store was arisiert wurde, so confiscated by the Nazis. And my great-grandmother then decided to send away her 2 youngest daughters. She probably felt they didn't have any more safe future in Berlin. And so my grandmother was sent to Israel, at the time still Palestine, at the age of 16 on an illegal ship, a very famous Israeli family story, if you will. And her family unfortunately stayed in Berlin and didn't make it. So I perceive my coming to Berlin, which wasn't planned, as a sort of a coming back of the family. And I like having this perspective. There's a famous saying by an Austrian writer whose name now escapes me, and he said, there is a way, there is a path von der Humanität durch Nationalität bis zur Bestialität. From humanity through nationality all the way to bestiality. And the Germans, led by the Nazis, marched that path all the way to the end, to the construction of the gas chambers. And yet you see today so many democracies who are struggling to stay such. And I think if there's anything that the Second World War and the Holocaust specifically awarded us, if you will, is the memory. And if you forget that, then you might find yourself on such a path. The DAD didn't only influence my path, I would say it put me on a path. Before that, I had an idea what I wanted to do, but as soon as I got the scholarship, it became reality. I moved to Berlin, I started conducting the research, eventually published a novel, eventually had it translated into German, and am now working on its adaptation into a feature film. So it really put me on that path. My book, what interested me when I was writing it, at the center of it was the question, what were to happen if a Holocaust survivor can no longer share his past with us? But not because he chooses to, because he wants to remain silent, but rather because he's unable to, facing the onset of dementia, for example. What do we do then when he makes, for example, historical mistakes in his story? Because as someone who was born and raised in Israel, I was always taught that everything that Holocaust survivors tell us is the absolute truth. And that is also true. But what happens when they suffer from dementia? Also looking at it as a metaphor for our day and age in which Holocaust survivors are slowly disappearing. What do we do then? And this question interested me, and I try to raise questions that interest me and hopefully engage with the students in that way rather than to tell them what's the answer. I would say know where you're coming from if you want to get anywhere, right? People who don't know their past don't have a future. I think it's attributed to Churchill, but we should really all attribute it to ourselves. You should know where you're coming from, and then it will be easier for you, I think, to navigate this labyrinth of over media today. If you know your own core, then you can stay on your path. And for that, you have to be nothing but curious and persistent.